RiseAbsorb is redefining what growers expect from phosphate fertilizer. Backed by data and built for performance, RiseAbsorb helps reduce phosphorus losses, improve uptake, and boost ROI without increasing input costs. Join the next wave of growers switching to the next generation of phosphorus fertilizers by visiting phospholutions.com.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Monday edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. It is Thanksgiving Monday in Canada, but we're not taking the day off. We got a show for you here today, and it's a really special show. We're going to get to that in a second. If you have any feedback on today's program, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Remember, that is a text line as well, 855-776-6147. You can also find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms indeed. Well, coming up this fall, we will have the 2025 class of inductees into the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame. And one of this year's inductees is somebody that we've chatted with over the years of Real Agriculture, a huge contributor to not just agriculture in Manitoba, but of course across the country. And it is Dori Gingera-Beauchemin, and Dori joins us right now. Dori, thanks so much, and congratulations.
Hey, Shaun. Hey, thanks. Thanks for both the congratulations as well as inviting me to share some stories with you. I really enjoy the work you do, and so it's just great to join you for this conversation. And yeah, it's a thrill of a lifetime. Absolutely.
Okay, so what was your first reaction when you got the phone call or you heard the news? What went through your mind?
Well, actually, I didn't really believe it. Not that I thought that who was calling me wasn't true, but it was just hard to believe after 44 years of a great career, and, was certainly met, done some amazing things and met amazing people. To think that this would come is really just, I never considered it. I never thought it would happen. And so what a thrill. And just to be recognized by, first of all, the nomination group that did it from Manitoba, cross-section of folks that I've worked with and I admire, put that together over the winter time. And just, I told them when they indicated they had nominated me, just the thrill of getting nominated by that group and knowing how many people wrote letters of support was an honor, to say nothing about this. So it's tremendous. It's it's a spark of a lifetime, that's for sure.
Well, over 40-year career at the Manitoba Department of Agriculture, also involved with Protein Industries Canada, Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute, CAPI, Protein Manitoba, Farmers Abroad Canada. I think I'm probably leaving some off the list there. Just when I say those points, what comes to mind?
Well, the reality is that when you get invited to these boards, at a stage in life, you want to pick those things that are really part of what keeps you going during the day. And so to your point about, there's several about protein, and protein was a big part of our department's efforts in order to accelerate the industry's growth. And more importantly, personally, that I spent lots of time in that protein world and certainly enjoyed every bit of it. And so to be able to do it on the pick board now is just sort of just the icing on the cake. Canadian Agriculture Policy Institute is just a really group of smart people and great thinkers that allow and encourage the freedom to look how putting together Canadian farmers' thoughts and interests and try and mobilize them into some kind of an action. It's a great group, and certainly if folks are ever able or invited or see a need for an institution that can do some great work in helping describe what's happening and put together, thoughts around it. Cappy is great. I really enjoy Cappy more than I thought I would. Like you can get into a group of policy wonks in this industry, and it just goes down the rabbit hole. And I asked, and this is, with all the love in my voice, I'm going to say this. I asked at the beginning, are we going to talk about something besides BRM? And they promised me we would, and they've delivered on that. So it's a vast background, tremendous people, and again, an honor. And Farmers Abroad Canada is new kind of to me, and it's driven by a number of Manitobans who go back to recognizing work done by Dr. Ronald here in Manitoba and his family in parts of the world that need support. And so to be invited to that group it's an eclectic group. And certainly talking about doing ag internationally as well and supporting that in classrooms is great. And then a bit of 4-H, of course, is always appearing on my list of things that I participate in as well, although at different levels at different times, but has been a steady one that I've given both energy at work, but more importantly, my time.
We've got more coming up with Dori Gingera-Beauchemin here on RealAg Radio, a member of the 2025 class of the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame. When we come back, you're listening to RealAg Radio, Real Radio 147. Time for a product spotlight, joined right now by Mark Alberts, who's the Senior Brand Manager for Invigor. Walk us through this Invigor Book and Buy.
Really that opportunity for farmers and retailers that are looking to plan ahead, make their decisions for next year, and getting rewarded for doing so by November 14th, 2025.
Which Invigor hybrids are eligible?
Eligible Invigor hybrids are going to vary by province. Growers, keep in mind where you're located, and please search out invigorbookandbuy.ca for which Invigor hybrids are going to be right for you. So number one, growers, visit invigorbookandbuy.ca and figure out which eligible hybrids in the lineup are going to fit. Number two, visit your retail by November 14th, 2025 and book your intentions. Number three, go back to that same retail and purchase your Invigor hybrids in 2026 when you're ready to go, and you'll be eligible for a $30 per bag rebate that would get paid back to you in the fall of 2026. Just a quick plug for invigorresults.ca. If you're looking for some of those local proof points closest to your farm of which hybrids in the Invigor lineup might have a good fit.
Anniversaries are a time of reflection, celebration, and connection. 10 years ago, G3 set out with a vision to build something better for Canadian grain farmers. And you joined us on that journey to launch a new national network. Thank you for the relationships that made it possible. A decade of growth, a decade of connections, and more in decades to come. Connect with your farm business representative or find your closest elevator at g3smarter.ca.
You've always farmed smart. What if you had more insight? Your Co-op Grow team can help you collect, analyze, and interpret data so you can make the best decisions for your farm. Plan for success in 2026. Talk to your Co-op Grow team today. Well, we're today Thanksgiving special here on this Monday, and we're talking to Dory Gingera-Beauchemin, who is a member of the 2025 class of the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame. Let's continue the discussion. Do you feel that you have a career-defining moment that you would anchor yourself on, or is it just a series of contributions?
Hey, that is a very interesting question, and this may sound like a trivial point, but while I was the chief of the 4-H program, because I did that's an outdated term, but it's the provincial 4-H lead. While I was that, we were busy doing business risk management programming, and there was a need to put some of us sort of headquarters people. There was a need for people to go out and work with farmers, help them fill out forms. It was the introduction of some of the business risk management programs, and I'm going to say like 1993, 92, and actually my director at that time said, we need the farm management crew is going out. We don't have enough, and we need you to go. And I was assigned to work in Altona, and I worked there with the team, ag reps, farm management specialists. I probably knew the least of all of them, and met with a number of farmers from the area of Altona. And it was that point that introduced to me I knew the department well, but I'd spent a good number of years in the 4-H section. It turned my eyes to what else the department can do and what else the needs are. And it was after that, then I started to explore. I was fortunate to be invited to new positions along the way. And then after that, I was appointed a regional director, actually, in Portage la Prairie. I had 11 ag rep districts, a huge team out there. Central Manitoba is just a powerhouse of agriculture activity, very diversified. And so from there, then I went on. I was the director of marketing and farm business management. Took me sort of around the world and all over the place. And another tremendous experience. And then I moved over into the assistant deputy minister's office, sat in a couple of those chairs and deputy. But that was really a point for me. The rest of the industry wouldn't have known that. But for me to know that there's much more out there. And I think, because of good mentors and because of people that believed in young people like me, I was allowed to do it. I always wondered, can you really actually spend 44 years in one organization, and sort of not have all your faults and your errors catch up with you, right? But you can, and so the public service is tremendous that way. I was fortunate, though, as Deputy Minister of Agriculture, when there's a lot of great deputies, and it's common practice, to move folks around and, put deputies in different departments and have them bring their strengths and skills. I never was asked to go anywhere else. I never offered to go to another department, although I did sport, culture, and heritage. I did double duty for a while, but I was able to stay in ag too. And to me, that was just in itself a real privilege because, like I said, many deputies have expertise areas, but they're asked to move around. I wasn't. I was locked in solid right in the department. So
you knew every nook and cranny of that building.
Yeah, I did. And I go back still because either I go for meetings with government officials there, or I go visit, and it's still one of the most honorable places to have an office. You walk in awe of a building and what it means to democracy and the history of it. And yeah, it was a privilege to have an office there. Air conditioning would have been nice, but you can overlook that for the rest of the like I said, awesomeness of that building. So
you mentioned mentors, and if you don't want to name names, you don't have to, but you're fine to. Talk about those early mentors that influenced and shaped your philosophy, and whether it was agriculture in general or just motivated you to want to continue to progress and obviously lead the department for so many years.
Good question, because and again, it's sometimes not the obvious ones that folks think that have made a big difference. But when I was a student living, I was still in grade 12. I was invited on rural step programming. That's a blast from the past. Rural step, where teams of young people were put together to go offer work on farms and help paint barns and tear down old granaries and that stuff. And at that point, I was also been active in the 4-H program, so certainly met a lot of the staff in the department then. But really, it was working with ag reps in the Parkland region. I had been a summer student then. After I was in university, I went for first year science, and then I switched to agriculture. I working with ag reps during the summer up in the Parkland area was just another awesome experience. And to me, those mentors were really, and given the diversity of jobs you can give a summer student, or a summer student has no choice in doing, that's the other part. It again shows you what's possible. I had an ag rep that I worked with just before I got my permanent job in the department. Dave Hill, he was there for decades, and he knew it was kind of one of my last days as a summer student, and I was moving to a permanent 4-H position. And he told me to come in his office. He was very stoic, extremely stoic. And he'd sit in his office there, and he'd look, and then he'd kind of close his eyes, and I'd be waiting. He says, "Dory, for the first few days of your new job, just keep your mouth shut." But really what he was doing is really underscoring one of the very important principles of extension is listening and understanding what the clients need versus, stumbling in as a brand new person and thinking you've got all the answers when really you don't even know what the wants and needs nor the issues are. And so in his very direct way, it was a way of saying, remember the important steps here in being a successful extension agent, right? Finding out who are the people that really are influencers, talking to the larger crowd to find out the needs, and then, hearing stories from staff that have already gone that way. So, so he kind of summed it up when he just said, keep your mouth shut for the first few days.
It's like that saying, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Yeah, that's right.
Remember that ratio. Yeah,
exactly. So it one of those things now. So that's very early in my career. And, I'd worked with a number of deputies as well, too. And so I got invited in to a deputy to have a meeting with him. They were all hims before I came along in the department. I was the first female deputy, so I can use that and nobody can identify it. I went to see him, and I don't know. Have you been into the deputy's office or the?
No, not in Manitoba. No,
it's massive. It's massive. It's probably, it's almost as big. And the Minister of Agriculture is a huge office. One of the 4 corners, right? Agriculture's got one of the 4 corners in the building because it's one of the 4 original departments, and we've maintained it. It is huge. Anyhow, and so he invited me in. He had a large desk, a long table, and a couch, and a chair. And he said to me, why don't you come on in? And I said, sure. I think, first of all, fearing I don't know what I had done wrong, right? I think I must have been a director then. And he invited me in, and he said, pick a chair to sit at. I thought, okay, this is part game or something going on here. So yeah, I looked, and there was his desk, there was the table to sit at, and there was the chairs. And so I went ahead and sat at the table. And he came to his chair, and he said, he stood behind it, and he said, word is out that you want this chair. And his, right? I said, oh, no, not at all. And he said, well,
Are you talking to me? You're like looking around.
That's right. Did somebody else come into the meeting? And then he said to me, I said, no, I'm so fortunate where I'm at. And he said, you really should want this chair. And he said, you need to start thinking about the steps to get there, and you need to diversify. You've been a 4-H team leader forever, and that's great, but you need to diversify to other positions, right? So I was able to do that. So again, it's sort of one of those pieces that really was exciting to be able to do, and have him offer that. And then other deputies and other assistant deputy ministers at that time took a risk on me.
We'll continue our conversation with Dory when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. For the upcoming growing season, take advantage of RiseAzorb.
RiseAzorb performance has been proven on hundreds of on-farm trials, which you can view at fosssolutions.com. Additionally, growers can take advantage of the RiseAzorb Grower Guarantee Program. This program protects growers' revenue up to $40 per acre if their yields don't match their 10-year APH.
Discover the impact. Download the RiseAzorb Performance Report to see how RiseAzorb is transforming nutrient efficiency and driving results in the field.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hepner and Lindsay Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. With your canola in the bin, it's time to look up savings for next year's season. Act now and save up to $75 per bag on DeKalb canola with Harvest Rewards, but only until October 31st. Visit DeKalbRewards.ca for details. That's DeKalbRewards.ca for the details. We're talking today to Dori Gingera-Beauchemin, who is a member of the 2025 class of the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame. Let's continue the conversation with Dori.
But I put my hand up for stuff that wasn't necessarily a fit a lot. And I think that that is probably, it's more the attitude and the interest than it is any particular moment. But
so why did you do that? You wanted the experience?
Yeah, I wanted the experience, and I needed to make sure you try and keep up your agriculture skills, at a little bit of them that are diverse, right? And so that you don't get trapped, and then the hallway to where you're going gets narrower because you've limited yourself. And how do you know, like when you're working in the ag rep areas, your clients cover so many subject areas, right? And so it's good to keep your fingers in it. So yeah, it's been a great career. And, I've had people on the outside as well, too, from commodity groups. There's been some significant leaders that have brought me in. And, I was so honored when you get some of these hardworking, especially those leading commodity groups that have been out in the trenches there and trying to represent their membership as well as possible, said to me, Dory, when there was changes in, and there always is in government, and changes in assignments of ministers, and he said to me, we always knew that you were there. And so so then, of course, what that makes you do is feel that the weight is even heavier as to the work you should deliver for them, right? Now, I'll tell you what, Shaun, we've got the best ag industry here in Manitoba. There's such a very forward-thinking and collaborative group. Not all the time, right? There's lots of issues that rub people the wrong way, but we've held so many meetings with producers, with the minister or not, and and on tough subjects, always respectful. I like, and sometimes I was surprised thinking how hot the temperature is on it, on the subject. And yet there was never an incident where we were, where we were called out as especially as civil servants. Now, politicians, that's a different story.
Yep.
But what a respectful industry to work in. So when you watch that happening, you yourself want to even deliver more back for all of them, because they in themselves are so professional at what they do and what they offer, and how powerful their work can be over the long term, and they stick with it. That you just go back to with the department and you say, like, we got to pick it up, people. Like, look what our clients are doing. They're needing us, right? But so, yeah, a tremendous group here in Manitoba. So,
well, and ministers, they come and they go. But when you've been in that seat as long as you are, you're the constant piece of all of that. And so I'm curious a little bit, was the fact that, you also farmed, did that help you in terms of, even though that you're working in the department, you're a bureaucrat, you still have that connection to the primary industry. That had to help with the connection to the grower.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that, and the same thing is when I look into our department and our staff that do that as well. It's a bit tricky sometimes, right? Because, people might call it out that, is there a conflict of interest? And I'm really of the nature, as long as, you're making sure you're using time professionally. And if you've got personal time that you're combining, whatever, you take it as that. But to say we can influence the price of wheat, I do know that from my own perspective. My husband wasn't able to participate in a number of government programs because they ran, through my office or across my desk. And so I always asked him every so often, you think it's still worth it? And he never said no.
Like it.
So he said, we're okay still, Dora, so not to worry about that. But yeah, ministers, but just a variety of ministers with different skill sets, totally different skill sets.
And different political sides too. Like that's the other part of it.
Wow, exactly. And each one of them I had a good, sometimes unique relationship with, and but again, they're just folks wanting to come and do the best, right? That's their commitment, and that's why they run in the first place. And yeah, sometimes life gets in the way and distractions happen or stuff happens in the political parties, but for the ministers of agriculture have been solid people. All of them, of course, except Roseanne Wojcik, all gentlemen, really. And I picked that word very strategically because that's the way they were. And just so open to having the department participate in trying to determine what's the best for the department as well. Manitoba, of course, is the deputy minister's office is attached to the minister's office. So it's just one little walk, down a very short hallway, and we're there. And so the coming and going back and forth was regular, and the hotter the topics, the more regular the door people were going back and forth. But so staff would come in with me all the time to the ministers, and the ministers would ask for them to come. And so we had new staff join the department, perhaps, and, from our colleagues, they were colleagues of ours in the feds, or they came from another department. They'd join and they'd say, like, we don't hardly see our assistant deputy minister or deputy, never mind going. And I'd say, you guys come with me, we'll go see the minister. And they like, all what? And, and I said, oh yeah, whoever was the minister of the day was always welcome to them coming in and speak truth to power, and then let's deliver people, right? And so that was really honored and encouraged in the department. And a lot of it, because your question about the reality of when folks are actually farming and, they're the ones who are actually having real skin in the game. The ministers like to hear those stories. And most of the ministers I worked with also farm themselves. So, right,
Yeah.
there's that collegiality that happens so very quickly, right? And all the war stories everybody starts talking about, right? I harvest this and, so we had lots of crop guys and certainly cattle people as well as ministers. So that background was diverse. And yeah, so it was real privilege to watch how ministers work, right? To watch how they work, and they each have different styles. And Ralph Eichler, he was a minister. I was a minister with him twice, and deputy minister with him, and he, we'd travel a lot in the world. He and I did, and I would watch him walk into places like hotels or, and restaurants or facilities, right? And he would stop and take the time to thank people for what they do to make us stay better, right? And if I had a team there was several of us, I said, watch him. Watch when he walks in here and see what he does, right? Just think of what that gets you. And it's not self-serving because he's genuine about it, but what that brings back to you. And I said, we should take more time that way, and so those are those little life lessons that help develop a culture in a department, right? If the minister's leading and doing that, and you can see it, and it's honest, and he does it to the staff, then it percolates down and certainly sets a good tone. Sets a good tone. Very good.
We've got more coming up here with my discussion with Dory. When we come back, you're listening to RealAg Radio.
Soil health is under pressure, but real solutions start below the surface. Black Earth offers a full suite of humic solutions, from high-purity granules to powder, liquid, and soluble formulations, all powered by pure Humulite. Formulated for performance, backed by consistency, trusted by growers worldwide from one of the world's rarest reserves. Grow stronger with the power of Black Earth Humulite. Learn more from Mine to Market at blackearth.com.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
The future of Canadian food is strong, and FCC is ready to help the next generation of innovators like you with financing tailored to your needs and resources to help you keep growing. To get started, visit fcc.ca/youngfarmer. Okay, that's fcc.ca/youngfarmer. Let's continue our conversation with Dory. With the years that you were at the department, and even if we think previously, like, you mentioned agriculture was one of the original four in the province of Manitoba. That comes with some real history and weight. Across Canada, and this federally or across many different provinces, agriculture always seems like it's, is the ag portfolio going to get the attention it needs within the entire context of government?
Right.
Do you feel that sometimes that concern is it overstated? Is it just the reality that, things have changed? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, I'm not, I would suspect there are places that actually face those challenges. And I think this is true both provincially and federally. I think, there's a basic respect, but I think the strength comes with the minister. I think if you've got a strong minister that knows his file and knows how his or her file meets the overall objectives of government, you can't be a one-trick pony going when there's all kinds of challenges and all kinds of fiscal restraint and just walk in and, and just sort of be narrow about I'm ag only. But to have agriculture as part of the solution base, or to have agriculture participate in the wider government initiatives, if somebody, if a minister can think their way through how they position that, there's a, there to me is less of a pushback than there is about like, I'm only ag, and, the money is needed. And I think that maybe runs, thin after a while, but
Yeah.
it's the strength at the table. It's a strength at the table, right?
That makes sense.
And then they bring that strength back, and then they set the tone for how serious some of those issues are, and that we can't ignore them because we are part of a larger government service that needs to serve the citizens of Manitoba. And how do we do that?
Before we started this discussion, you had pointed out to me something that wasn't as obvious to me. If you look at the roster and the people that are in the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame, there's not a lot of people from government service side of the industry. I guess, as you reflect on that, how does that make you feel?
Well, every one of us that get the honor to be in the Hall of Fame is great, and I think it's also sort of a government thing, a civil service thing, that we just stay behind the scenes, right? So we're not front stage, right? Agriculture, we've got a very, and I say a very social department, and a very social in meaning that there's a lot of human interaction. Lots, you can go to meetings and conferences, like I'm sure you could go every day, right?
Yeah.
So we create this, right? We do this is how we've connected across the industry for decades, and we do it in extension all the time. And so our efforts are really to make sure we help the industry determine where they're at, where they want to go, and help them get there, and then as they tell us, get out of our way, right? And so that's really, I think, why, because there's, especially if you're not, in Manitoba, right? The civil servants aren't political, even at the deputy level. And so we're not in that other atmosphere of the political side, although we respect it. And I think that's why. I think we quietly do our thing. I think, longevity, you got to stick around, and your name gets, if you're around long enough, like me, right? And I guess people start to recognize you, and you hope it's for the work, because with that work is the commitment and the belief and the champion, right? But I was still a public civil servant the whole time through, and I'd make sure that even though people knew me, Shaun, and there was a change, I'd make sure people knew that who the minister was, that he or she is the lead. And I'd actually say to them, like, don't look at me. The minister's right here. Use your time wisely while he's here, and then we will figure out after this where we stand on it. But so I always made sure that, we were a team. There was never, I never hopefully put a minister in an uncomfortable position, because I always knew who the minister was, always. And I tried to have the staff recognize as well too. So this is all about, what's your part in the success story? What's your part? And I'd say to our teams, have you made a difference in the life of a farmer today? Just think that. Just think about that. Now, it might not be directly, right? But have we eased up how we, do a form for a program? Have you made it easier? Have you made a difference? Because, I'm the one filling out forms now for the programs we can apply for, right? And I think, why am I filling this information out again? And my husband says, aha. So now you think it's hard to do, when before you said, we're doing our best. Well, when you experience it. So I try and always connect the work we were doing back to the farmer. Even though there's a big value chain that we work with, have we made a difference back there? Because you can start working on all kinds of programming. Let's talk about protein, right? Lots of jurisdictions, and certainly Manitoba's there, are doing work on protein and efforts to, advance it, get the science going, attract more investment and, all of those things. But at the end of the day, does it make a difference to farmers, right? How do they capture some of that, profit from advancing our protein industry? It's not always, the answer's not always easy either, right? So,
Dory, I have interviewed hundreds, like a lot of people now that I've been doing this for 15 plus years. And there's a lot of interviews that you kind of get to a stage where somebody will say like, oh yeah, you interviewed me once. And it's just, you don't recollect, right? And there's lots of people that are regulars and you talk to them all the time. There's things that people say that you forget, some things you remember. I can remember you and I in Calgary interviewed you at a table as, you had come off the stage. And I'll never ever forget that interview because you said something in that interview to me that is something that I've always remembered. I've never ever forgot it. And it was about the human characteristic of being curious. And I have never forgot that. I've carried that with me throughout my career post that. It was a very, very impactful thought that you had that day to me. Talk about that characteristic of being curious and why you think it's so important.
Well, thanks for bringing that memory back. And certainly in the job you do and that you do so well, it really is curiosity that makes it genuine. And the efforts to pull out information from people because you genuinely want to know, right? And so, I hope that, again, along the compendium of extension programming, that our staff, our teams are actually entering those discussions, not wanting to say they have the answer, but really finding out where folks are at and to be able to listen and learn from them and to not feel embarrassed that they don't know the information because, wow, have you missed an opportunity to learn if you don't ask? And I did that a number of times in my career. And I think when you're intimidated, especially years early on, that there was less of, the industry is full of such powerful, smart women now. Anyhow, and there was fewer of us, although still smart and powerful, but fewer of us. There were times that you thought, well, I can't ask. People are going to say, well, how'd you get the job in the first place then if you didn't know it, right? But to think what a great opportunity I missed as a result of keeping that back, and so and to be able to explore and then people feel you're genuine. And I think whether you're doing it at work or whether even you're doing it at home, right? The curiosity, and even if you've been married for decades, there's still elements of our life that are new to people, and to be able to engage people so they're honest. And people love talking about things that are important to them, right? Love talking about it. And you create this relationship at a different level if you actually are very, if you're attentive, but you're asking questions. This is not a one-way discussion. And there's a certain stage that you actually want to give back. So when people ask for I'm not going to say advice, but when they're asked, say, I've got a problem, what would you do if you were me? And to be able to be sincere and listen is critical. But I just think, again, applying that, whether it's personally or in your career or out in your community, I think it serves people well. But a lot of us are intimidated to do that. And, I've got 3 sisters, there's 4 of us. And I've got one that asks so many questions. She drives me just crazy. But you know what? We can go into a crowd, especially, we're we grew up, spent 40 years living in McCurry. And, she goes back there and everybody knows her, and it's because she left that impression. So, and she, like, I just don't know how she does it. And she does it with such sincerity that I think what a gift it is to be that curious about people, and then to be able to have people feel good that you've asked about it, right? So, but again, curious enough to also go around and work with farmers abroad. Canada is very interesting because now you're working with, a new part of the world that I've never, spent a lot of time, although I should have, thinking about. And there's people that on that board that that's their life's work, is international development work. And I'm sitting at that table thinking, wow, these people are so equipped in the skills and the understanding it takes to do international development work. I should learn from them. So yeah. But again, in the position you are, in the job you do, and again, do it well, you've been curious because you do ask those good questions. And people do feel like they want to be able to share it with you because you're sincere, versus people are asking questions that they actually know the answer to and are really anxious to give you the answer back. There's people like that. And maybe we are a few times. Hopefully we're less of that and more of genuine.
Well, I appreciate that gift that you gave to me. I told you, Dori Gingera-Beauchemin is a legend. She has, her contributions are incredible. We got one more segment coming up here on RealAg Radio. Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola, it's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
I'm Lindsay Smith, host of The Agronomist, and I want to thank you for tuning in for over 200 episodes of our beloved little program. Join me Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for our live and interactive agronomy Q&A. Each week, our guest panel will handle some of your toughest agronomic questions live, streaming on YouTube, Facebook, X, and RealAgriculture.com. Tune in Monday nights or go to RealAgriculture.com/agronomist and sign up for our email notifications and don't miss an episode.
It's a good time to book next year's canola while this year's results are fresh, especially when it saves you money. Save up to $75 per bag of canola with DeKalb Harvest Rewards, but only until October 31st. Visit DeKalbRewards.ca for details. Let's finish up our conversation with one of the members of the 2025 class of the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame. It is Dory Gingera-Beauchemin. Here's the rest of my conversation. You've mentioned a few times about working as a woman in a relatively male-dominated industry, and that has shifted over time. But my perception of you and my being around you a little bit is, if you want to use that phrase like glass ceiling, you just sort of like busted right through it. Now I probably make that seem a lot easier than the reality of it, but I'm speaking to like kind of your attitude. You knew what you wanted as your career developed, and you took it. Like you just went and didn't let some of those traditional limitations be something that held you back. That's my perception.
Yeah. Well, it goes in spurts, right? So there.
Yeah.
As long as you get some wins or support along the way, you can keep going. And if you're in an environment or if we're the supervisors or those in charge of sort of work areas, and if we're not creating that environment, people could give up a lot easier. But I never felt that. I mean, I said to you, there's 4 girls in our family, my mom and my dad never felt that we were limited by what we did because we were female. And so you come knowing that, and you come with people expecting you to do well in spite of what's happening around you in society. And so we were given good skills and certainly knew that we could do it. You could do it, you guys, you girls can do it, right? And so, which was, I think, part and parcel of it. And I come from a family of now a number of powerful women, and I'm just so proud of them. Not to say anything about the males in a family or in a relationship, around you, but then there's mentors as well. So you watch, there's people that are in the Hall of Fame from Manitoba. There's a few women in there, So, you think about Joanne Booth. I mean, watching her and, seeing what she has done. And I mean, she worked in the department with us, so kind of had some of the starting place, right? And watching Joanne Ross, take off and do amazing things in the classroom, and then be invited to help do that nationally as well, Robin Anderson, from Emerging Ag. And wow, I've never even heard of some of the places she works in now around the world, I'll tell you, so
all over the world, Robin.
all over the world. Where are you calling from now, Robin? And she gives time back to things like farmers abroad Canada. So you watch that, and that there's women that have, and we had a good group. I started in the 4-H program, right? It was a safe place to start in the department, right? Very safe, because you work with volunteers that want to be there. You work with people that are like-minded like you, that grew up in the 4-H program, had lots of talent and skills to offer. And so it was safe. There was very few things I did that people weren't thanking me for. So I started in just like this great garden of growth. And so I entered the department sort of stage 2 when I moved into management, having these great experiences behind me. So I thought, why can't I do this? So it was like, it was a slow entry period, but along the way it was supported and encouraged. And then in the 4-H program, you turn around and do the same thing. That's what I want our young people to do. Leadership skills, right? Confidence. And to be able to do that. So you have to emulate that yourself too. So my head never hurt from hitting a ceiling. Never hurt.
I like it.
It never hurt. Yeah.
Oh, great stuff. Dory is amazing. You know what? If you're listening to the podcast version of this, you're going to hear the final minutes of the interview. We were not able to squeeze it all into today's show here on Rural Radio 147. So if you are listening to the podcast, you're going to hear the rest of it in the bonus. For everybody else, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or call the RealAg feedback line, or text it 855-776-6147. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion with Dory. She is such a deserving inductee into the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame. And we're interviewing all of this year's inductees, which is one of my annual, I love doing it. And people that just have had such great contributions. If you are listening on Sirius, I highly encourage you to download the RealAg Radio podcast to check out the rest of my interview with Dory. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. We'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. We are going to be interviewing all of this year's class of the 2025 Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame inductees. And we're going to try to work them all into the show here over the coming month and a half. Thought Thanksgiving Monday was a great opportunity to do that. We weren't able to squeeze the entire conversation with Dory into the show on Rural Radio 147, which was unfortunate, but we so much to chat about. It went a little bit longer than I anticipated. But here is the rest of my conversation with Dory Gingera-Beauchemin.
Yeah.
Okay, so in wrapping this all together, a few more questions. When people look back 20 years from now and they think about Dory and her career and her contribution to the industry of agriculture in Manitoba and beyond, what do you hope they say?
Oh, I hope Yeah, what do I hope they say? There's kind of several groups. I hope the people that I worked with in the department over those years had success, that they feel success and more of it, and they link it back to their time in the department. And I hope that linking it back was as a result of creating a place where people are encouraged and recognized and orientated to do a good job. So that is one of the things I hope. There's a cadre, there's a lot of them, right, that I hope. And in the industry, I hope, and when folks, I mentioned when folks said, in all the midst of change, Dory, we always knew you were there. That this bit about being, around and supporting the industry, that I live, breathe, and sleep this stuff. And that's why I rallied, worked around to help the industry move forward, because I do believe in, when I'm not a champion's kind of overstating it, but I'm one of the largest cheerleaders for the industry. And if I get on my soapbox still, like I see, when stuff comes up in the media, the department's doing, I give a call and I say to them, like, what the hell, you guys? Excuse me, So I'm not letting it go. I'm sure there's people that wish I would just kind of, go and just babysit grandkids all the time.
I want to see the other side of that, where it's like,
So I want people to invite me when they need help. I certainly am. I'm certainly up, and you only have such a long, so your shelf life isn't that long after you retire. So you better get used during that, and then leave some of it.
Yeah.
I just want our farm to be a place here too in 20 years where the little ones that are being born now say, we're going to the farm to come here. And so that's part and parcel of what's really important to me, is the sustainability of our own operation, albeit smaller, but it's certainly an important piece of this agriculture experience that's been such a big part of my life and certainly our family's life. So, yeah.
Those are great thoughts. What message would you like to leave with farmers, or civil servants, policymakers, and especially the young people that are thinking about entering the agri-food or agriculture sector today?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the issues are, certainly impacting, people's view as to, what will the future look like. But if you recognize that the industry all throughout it's a very, in its true words, a very organic industry. It's evergreen and it keeps evolving. Does it change? Absolutely. What I do hope though is people remember that the heart of this business of producing food is the people at the primary end. And I'm going to be, this is going to, if I say this will really, people say, well, she's just that age and she's afraid of robots. But I really worry about when there's not a person in a tractor or a combine anymore. Because I know that the trust that the public has in the food system and in farmers, some of that still comes from people driving by and seeing them work. And I think that the humanness that the industry has it's been a signature piece of the industry, is the humanness. I hope that humanness remains in some ways, so that again, those who aren't as familiar with the industry and familiar with producing food can still see. I'm not a fan of Red Barn and straw hat. That's not what I'm talking about. But the reality of people understanding that there are humans behind it, that are giving, that are not only, it's not only a career and a business, it's a calling, and that they manage this science and this changing science and so much out of their control. But there are people there that are so committed to growing food and committed to social fabric and committed to, making our young people see a future in this industry that's not so easy anymore. But you hope the humanness doesn't disappear, both in the department. I want our staff to be able to, I want the staff to be able to remain out in rural Manitoba, to have a presence out there and not be all concentrated in one area. I do like offices. I do like when people come in, right? And I think that humanness is it's a badge of honor that agriculture can wear, and hopefully will continue to wear for a long time. And yeah, I just want to see those folks. I just want that recognition still there, and it's going to be tough to do, very tough to do. But I still hope there's people with that's got a lot of fire in their belly that are going to make sure that they're there. So,
well, Dory, I know you've inspired many of them, and your mark has been left on the industry. I want to congratulate you again on being a part of the 2025 class of the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame, and enjoy the ceremony and the time and the unveiling of your portrait. And thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, Shaun. It is a real honor, and my thanks to the Agriculture Hall of Fame organization for doing that, and all those who nominated me. What a tremendous honor it is. And thanks for the interview, Shaun. It's always a delight, and you do a great job.
Thanks, Dory. For all of you that are RealAg Radio podcast listeners, I would love to get your feedback on what you heard from Dory. Were there things that inspired you? Dory has, like I mentioned, the whole story about curiosity. I think she's inspired a lot of people, had a great impact, and somebody very connected to the world of agriculture, not only in Manitoba, but across the entire country. I would love your feedback on what you heard here today, too. You can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, and look out for the rest of our discussions with the inductees into the 2025 class of the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame. Have yourselves a great Thanksgiving, everybody, and thanks for downloading the RealAg Radio podcast.